and they encountered some unexpected geology, right?
Oh, that's exactly what you want to encounter.
That's a sentence I want to hear.
So they encountered some pockets of sand and glacial till, right? And when that was entirely different from the silt. You wound up with blowouts. You wound up having the pressure.
Blowout?
Blowout is so these tunnels are pressurized while they're under construction to keep the water out, right?
Sure.
And so what happens in a blowout? Let me skip ahead in the notes a little bit. A blowout is when essentially the air finds a way out of the tunnel into the riverbed, and then it forms a big bubble that
it's a queef. It's a queef.
Yeah, it goes straight up out of the river, and you get like a little geyser, right?
It's a queef.
Now, blowouts are a particularly nasty way to get killed. There's a number of ways to get killed in a blowout if you're a sandhog, right? The air pressure drops really rapidly. So you might get the bends. You get the bends. That's one option. The other option is that once the air pressure drops, the water rushes in and you drown, right?
Oh, I'd take that one.
Now, the third option is you get sucked up with the air pressure and then you wound up embedded in the riverbed.
Fuck.
No, thank you.
Give me the bends.
Yeah.
I will take the bends.
I'll risk the bends at that point.
Now, there was one guy. This is in a different tunnel. This was...
How the fuck do you die in quicksand underwater? That's the worst shit I've ever heard.
There was one guy, when they were building the tunnel for what's now the 2 and 3 train in 1916, there was a sandhog named Marshall Maybe, right, who got sucked out of the tunnel while in a blowout. And he was expelled from the East River in a 25-foot geyser.
Fuck no. Nope.
That's what the kids want these days.
Some guys...
I was looking for the drop as you said that.
He was picked up by some guys in a passing barge. They took him to the hospital. They found he only had some bruises. He was back to work the next day.
Give the guy a day off.
Nice.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only thing I have to say is...
Suck this place dry.
If you think we have time.
So anyway, in the East River tunnels, they had so many blowouts, they had to start staging barges above the tunnel head on the river to dump tons of cement
Why? You're
and
just going to
clay.
bump your head when you get spat out of there. Funk.
So that barge would, if there was a blowout,
How
they'd
was work?
immediately
You just come
dump.
home slurring. It's only sustained minor brain damage. Boss said it was fine.
The barges would be able to dump cement and clay over the blowout immediately to, make the problem less bad. Although it didn't solve it, right?
You just still get the bends, and also like both your eardrums just get like fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked. You get turned into Elmo at that point.
The media did greatly exaggerate difficulties building the tunnels. They were very difficult to build, but the media was like, "Oh yeah, they killed 20 guys a day here," right? But they eventually shut up when the Pennsylvania Railroad hired our friend Ivy Ledbetter Lee, who, as we mentioned in 2 episodes ago, or the first Penn Central episode.
The Nazi guy.
The Nazi guy, yeah. The guy he did PR for the Nazis later. He developed an innovative new way of quelling the press, which was called issuing a press release, right?
Oh, I thought you were going to say which was called murdering
them.
No.
Yeah,
he was the guy who understood that the journalist is at heart lazy, and so if you give them an article that's already written, they'll print it.
Exactly.
Oh, wait. Whoa, there you go.
Yeah, so this method has been used to great success by corporations ever since. Created a generation of lazy stenographers who call themselves journalists. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so the East River tunnels were completed in 1908. This left the question of the station, right? Which is where we have to introduce an architecture firm.
Oh no.
So this is Charles Follen McKim, right? He was the son of Quaker abolitionists. This is William Rutherford Meade, a cousin of Rutherford Hayes, who was a questionably legitimate president of the United States who ended Reconstruction. And this is Stanford White, pedophile.
Of such things are architecture firms made. two prodigious moustaches, an extremely well-supported dome of a head, and also pedophilia.
Yes. Together, they formed an architecture firm called McKim, Mead and White, which
Sounds
is
like a whiskey.
yeah, which was to become one of the most influential and respected architecture firms ever.
Is it
Now-
still around?
Sort of.
Oh, has it been like
Not-
amalgamated into something that's
It's-
like 6 letters or whatever?
No, it got the firm was renamed at some point,
Load-bearing nonsense.
and it may or may not. I don't think they exist in any meaningful form anymore.
Okay, sure.
Right, but their last like notable work was like 1960 something.
Oh,
And
fruity.
I mean, well, depending on who you are, you might argue their last notable work was like 1895.
New money trash.
Yeah. They got their start designing houses in what's called the shingle style, right? Throughout New
Yeah,
England.
I hate it.
Yeah, in the 1880s.
What's wrong with shingle style?
I like
Ugh.
shingle style.
No.
Why?
This is the William Lowe House up here, right? Which is the most notable one. Here's the Isaac Bell House down here.
I like the top one. I don't like the bottom one.
Good news.
this is-
The William Lowe House was raised in 1962.
Yeah.
Hooray!
Oh my God. So and they did a couple buildings you might call Richardsonian Romanesque, but they really made it big when they won the contract to
They did
design.
the Boston Public Library too, which I quite like.
They won the contract to design Madison Square Garden 2, right?
Madison
Over
Square Gardener.
Yes.
Madison Cube Garden. Come on, it was right there.
Vincent Scully, the architecture critic, saw once said about the William Lowe House as sort of once a climax and kind of conclusion for McKim, Mead and White. Since it was almost immediately abandoned by the more conventionally conceived columns and pediments of McKim, Mead and White's later buildings. Essentially, they stopped doing original things once they realized they could make money just doing Beaux-Arts, right?
Yeah.
I like this fucking like big Renaissance palazzo up here.
Oh yeah, I mean that's Madison Square Garden too. It's a fun little building, right? Well, not a little building; it's a big building, right?
It's a fun little big building.
Yeah.
So the campanile on the top,
They started doing much more formal, like Beaux-Arts style buildings because they had much more prestigious clients. They made a lot more money. They could do bigger buildings. So stuff like the entire campus of Columbia University, for instance. Here's the agricultural building at the World's Columbian Exhibition in Chicago, which Louis Sullivan said set back American architecture by 50 years.
So the Brighton Pavilion, but less imaginative.
Yeah. The firm only got more prestigious after something called the Trial of the Century. And that was the criminal trial after...
Oh, this is his favorite thing.
Yeah. That was the criminal trial after Stanford White was murdered by Harry Kendall Thaw on the roof of his own building, Madison Square Garden 2, in front of an audience for being a pedophile.
I mean, yeah, you go with
victimless
that.
crime.
That's-
Victimless crime.
Yeah.
Advanced form of
bothers.
self-defense.
Yeah.
No jury
It-
would convict.
It's a little more complicated than that. Harry Kendall Thaw also had some proclivities.
Wasn't someone fucking someone's sisters?
They
no.
were like fighting over a child at the time. Great.
Jesus.
Stanford White had fucked Harry Kendall Thaw's wife
There we
while
go.
she was 16.
Oh, wait, I know
no.
about this because I know about the
Jeez.
fucking wife too. She was like an early celebrity, right?
Yes.
Fucking Evelyn Nesbit, right?
Yes, Evelyn
Holy
Nesbit.
crap.
Jesus, pulling that shit from that was
Yeah, wow.
amazing.
No, because I read Greg Jenner's book, Dead Famous: A History of Celebrity, and Evelyn Nesbit and her fucking like pedophilic love triangle is like sort of the prototypical early 20th century like debutante celebrity thing. It's like she was one of the first models, even.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean,
It was-
nothing changes. Yeah.
The murder itself was So when Thaw shot White in front of a whole bunch of people, they all thought it was a fun...
he shot him. That's disappointing. I was hoping it would have been knife. There we are.
Well, they all thought it was some kind of fun party trick, and they all applauded.
Like
and I realized, wait, that was a murder.
Yeah, he approached him, produced the pistol, said, "You've ruined my wife," which is the weirdest possible thing you could say, and then shot him twice in the face and once in the chest.
Now this happened.
I gotta ask the question though. Why stop at 3? You're already like, all right, I'm gonna murk this dude on a rooftop.
With a 1906 pistol, you're taking your life in your hands for each time you pull that trigger.
I know that's true, but
yeah. Well, I'm cranking the big knob that says gunshots to see if I get applause or not. So this happened in the middle of the Penn Station project, which is also another interesting thing. Is that Harry Kendall Thaw was the son of a major Pennsylvania Railroad freight forwarder. A little awkward.
Kind of like the planning meetings are a bit weird once like one of the architects has been shot in the face by one of the clients.
Oh no, you just do a weekend of Bernie's type of thing. It's fine.
So, but when they were designing the station, right? So Alexander Cassett didn't know shit about architecture or architecture firms, but he wanted to rival the New York Central's under construction Grand Central Terminal. And Samuel Rees suggested, why don't you use McKim, Mead, and White? And this was a match made in heaven because Cassett didn't know shit about architecture. And McKim, Mead, and White had never designed a train station.
Hell yeah.
Perfection. Absolute perfection.
The blandest possible station, please.
Yeah. So Cassett's intention, you have a grand entrance to New York City for long distance and intercity travelers and only intercity and long distance travelers, right? Commuters would, of course, continue using Exchange Place for convenient ferries and the new Hudson and Manhattan Railroad tubes to access the financial district, which is where the jobs were, right? So the station was designed as such. Now, Charles McKim got the broad outlines of the station and talked Cassett out of the most stupid things he suggested. Put a hotel on top. No.
Hey, it worked for some Pancras.
Yeah. Well, it worked for most things. And Charles McKim was like, no, we're gonna keep this low slung and Greco-Roman as fuck. Right.
It's a fucking it's a curia for trains.
Yes.
Those big arch windows. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, he talked him out of the hotel on top. He talked him out of cheaping out on the main waiting room because Cassett wanted to keep this low slung instead of having the massive Diocletian windows. Now, the responsibility for the design of the station was divided vertically, right? Everything below street level was the railroad's problem, and everything above street level was the architect's problem, right? And there's a lot of stuff that wasn't worked out until last minute. So, for example, it wasn't until they were actually building the platforms that someone was like, these should probably be high-level platforms and not flat platforms that are like on the ground, right? Where you have to step up onto the train, right? The overall design was, again, it was focused on one type of traffic, the one that was the railroad expected to increase indefinitely, which is the long-distance passenger, right?
That seems sustainable.
Yeah, obviously. You're never going to have a reduction in long distance rail traffic.
Never.
Never ever. So
you've prepared a little like virtual tour for us here.
I got a virtual tour of the old Penn Station, right? So let's say you enter through the front door here.